we looking online? Is that working?
We're good. Here we go.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming this evening. I'm impressed you all came out on a cold winter night in Steamboat to be a part of this discussion. I'm Marshall McCarthy. I'm the moderator of the event tonight. All right. Well,
How do I mute you?
There's an echo.
Oh, here we are. Thank you.
I'm Marshall McCarthy.
Thank you. Technology,
Yeah, so welcome to all of our people online too. We are live streaming it on YouTube, so I know we have some people joining from afar, so welcome to everyone who's joining us online this evening as well. I think many of you are familiar with Exploring the Sacred and who we are, but we're an interfaith dialogue group that have been around for over 20 years and do these periodically, these community forums on different events or different topics. So we'll just start with doing introductions of the leaders. You know, they're moving around here, so maybe each of you could just say your name and which group you're affiliated with.
I'm Tim Olmstead. I'm with the Buddhist community in town.
I'm Karen Post, and I facilitate the local A Course in Miracles study group.
Tim Selby.
Tim Selby. I'm here at Heart of Steamboat.
I'm Joanne Grace, and I'm from St. Paul's Episcopal Church.
And Colby Morris DeHarry, who's taking her daughter to the bathroom. She's the rabbi of the Jewish community in town, so hopefully she'll be back. She's good. Welcome back. Yeah, great. So tonight's topic is Cultivating Joy, Ancient Wisdom for Challenging Times. And we came to this topic after a number of months in our last few series have been focused on fear and despair and working with the political situation. And not that any of that has gone away, but the group really wanted to do something a little bit more uplifting and to give people an opportunity to reflect on what is joy, how can we touch that in our lives, how can we experience that as a way to hold space for what's happening in the world. And so that's what we'll be talking about today. And I don't remember who said it or where it came from, but in one of our groups, somebody said that joy can be a form of resistance. And for some reason that really stuck with me, just this idea that joy, finding this place of inner peace, can be a form of resistance in the face of everything that's happening in our world. So maybe we'll get into that. And also what we'll start with is just defining what we mean by joy, because we played a lot with just the words to use for this event. Are we talking about cultivating love? Are we talking about peace? Like, what is this experience of joy? Is it an emotion? Is it a mental state? So I'd like to just start by having you each define, when you're talking about joy, what is it that you mean?
Just trying to figure it out.
So from the Course's point of view, joy is not an emotion, it's an experience. It would align with joy, peace, love, light, are all the attributes of our original nature, our divine nature. So joy, these different experiences, these different attributes are reached when we are in moments free of fear. So it would also go along with awe. So that's for us what the word joy means.
I wasn't here for any of the conversation, so it feels.
Which is beautiful.
Just jump in. I'll jump in. I agree with you, absolutely. It is an experience, and I think it's also a neurological component, is that we can actually see joy in people.
Could you talk?
Sure, we can see joy in people. In other words, it's like when you smile or when you light up your eyes, there's a light in your eyes, there's an orientation. So I think of it more as an internal state. It's something that we can cultivate, something that we can embrace, something that we can hold on to. And sometimes that's really part of that resistance I think you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess I would just say, I think of joy as kind of just an appreciation of the experience of life, just the goodness of being alive and the goodness of that feeling that comes with that. I think it comes in the midst of all kinds of different circumstances, but that appreciation of the goodness of being alive is how I kind of would define it.
So from a Buddhist point of view, we would say very similar things. We would go so far as to say that joy, this basic sense of sort of abiding well-being, this kind of joy is possible for us even when on the outside everything's going crazy. This kind of joy is actually possible even when we're angry at someone. It's a way of being that's beneath all of the expressions of who we are. So it's a quality, as we said, it's a quality of peace, of balance, of flexibility, of openness, of naturalness. And it's not something that we can pin down, but we know it when we feel it. When we touch into it, something shifts, even though it's not something that we could find. And a little bit unlike what you said regarding awe, we would not predicate it on anything. We would say that it's actually our basic nature. It's the question is whether we are in contact with it or not. It's unchanging, it's always present. It's like this space in this room. It can accommodate 100 people, but the space in this room itself has never changed. So our basic nature is spacious and balanced, unchanging, and of the nature of fundamental well-being, is what we would say. It can never be changed. The question is whether we're in touch with that or not.
Sure. Check. So in Judaism, joy in Hebrew is simcha, and as is always the case, Hebrew is a very rich language, and there are multiple words that can mean the same thing, and then each word has multiple meanings. So joy, as my colleague said, also in Judaism is very complex. It's not as simple as we might think. As a human being, it can be enticing. And also as a rabbi, it can be enticing to shake our constituents and say, just be happy, right? But that's not how joy works, definitely. You can't cause somebody to be happy. And in some ways, God can't cause us to be happy. It's something that we have to access in terms of flow. Joy in Judaism, probably because of the history of the Jewish people, joy encompasses pain. It's all related. In order to access that joy, we have to also be able to access our own pain, which I know we've talked about in forums in the past. A figure in Judaism comes to mind when I think about Jewish joy, who's Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. He was kind of the master of Hasidic Judaism and mystic Judaism. And he was actually a very depressed person. He was clinically depressed. He couldn't get out of the cycle of really, really debilitating depression. And yet, simcha, joy, was one of his spiritual practices. He had many spiritual practices. And so there's a lesson there, right? That only until we can go into the depths of our own sadness, of our own darkness, can we see the light, right? And so that's all I'll say for now.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Colby. So in cultivating joy, the question is maybe why would we do this? That might seem obvious, but is it for one's own peace and happiness? Is it so we can hold space for the difficult things? Is it so that joy is contagious to other people? kind of what's the why of cultivating joy?
I think for us, of the many critical reasons to cultivate joy, the most important being that we care for ourselves. And when we're upset or something is off or we're disconnected from that inner sense of well-being, we feel it. And the fact that we feel it and that we can't contact it, we feel that something's off, we would say that's a proof that our basic nature is fundamentally of that nature of being joyful. Otherwise, we wouldn't miss it, we wouldn't long for it, we wouldn't feel its absence. But you mentioned joy as a practice. We also talk about joy, remembering to appreciate how remarkable this life is. That this is a life that we have is an opportunity to tame our mind, to open our heart, to to do what this life has to offer. This is what we call appreciative joy. We also have a beautiful idea which we call sympathetic joy, which for me is so beautiful, which is just the ability and the willingness and the eagerness actually to delight in the joy of others. When we see others, to take delight in it. And when that's the case, there's no end of it because it's everywhere. Yeah.
So to play on what you said, from the Course's perspective, we not only do it for ourselves, but we do it for each other. Think about, being around somebody who's laughing at a joke, just really enjoying it. And you may not even know what the joke is, but all of a sudden you find yourself laughing as well. Because this kind of open expression of joy, of laughter, of ease is contagious. And so we work on it in ourselves, because as we run into other people, and it doesn't mean making a joke or doing anything overt, but as we start to open to our own experience and expression of joy, we help others open up as well. And it's not anything that you have to say or do. It's just that expression, that energy coming from us. So from the Course, we touch on that joy, we cultivate that joy as a way to honor our brother.
Yeah. I think that's so good because it's both of what you said. It's for, when we ourselves are feeling that, we have it's a good life energy, we have good vibration, good vibe. And that's what enables us to help each other. That's what we do in community, right? Like sometimes when we gather in community, some of us can barely get out of bed, some of us can barely function. And we need other people with that kind of energy to lift us up, to help us. It happens kind of on all levels. And I think even in difficult times, like joy isn't like a denial of hardship of life, but in difficult times, I think it's probably when it's most necessary to have that kind of energy, whether we find it in ourselves or whether we bring it to each other. It is what gets us through and what helps us carry on. So yeah, we bring it all to each other.
So I'm sitting here wondering, to your question, I'm sitting here wondering why not cultivate joy? And I'm also thinking a little bit about, this embedded belief that we have from many of our traditions, and that is when another person is sad, you're not supposed to be happy. You're not supposed to be joyful. So if you're sad, that means I have to be sad. And part of our mirror neurons, we do that in that kind of way. And yet to be able to hold and cultivate joy is one way that we get to re-engage, not only with ourselves, but other people. To remember, it's like in the very beginning as we're little kids, that's the state they're in most of the time. I mean, you don't know any different. And so it's like we have to return to a very innocent time in our life to maybe remember what it's like to be joy before we're talked out of it. So I'm kind of wondering about those embedded beliefs.
Ooh, I like going last. I can be inspired. Wow, yes. I'm thinking it brings to mind the saddest holiday in the Jewish calendar, which is Tisha B'Av. It falls usually during the summer, and it commemorates the destruction of the first temple destruction of the Second Temple, and also various other tragic dates in Jewish history. And there's a line in Eicha, Lamentations, I think in English, and in Eicha it talks about all of this destruction, and then there's a line that says, may we turn our mourning into dancing. Mourning in, yeah, M-O-U into morning. Yeah, I like that too. So yes, we're mandated in a way to, there you go, honey. So absolutely that. It reminds me of my time drawing from a different tradition altogether. I studied abroad in Ghana. If any of you have been to, has anybody been to Ghana in West Africa? Beautiful, beautiful country. And while we were studying there, we had the privilege of attending a funeral. And here we all were like, oh, we didn't bring any black clothes. You know, what are we gonna do? And we get to this funeral, and it's literally a 5-day festival in the streets, full of music and life and culture and joy. And as we were studying Ghanaian culture, we realized how important, like, the more important or impact you were on society, so kings, queens, right? They had a longer festival for their funeral. It would sometimes last like 7 days. And that so speaks to what you're saying. We cultivate joy, yes, because it feels good, but also because it inspires those around us, and it's what we're mandated to do, is to turn our mourning into dancing.
Just a real quick comment as you're talking, I'm reminded that if we think about the transition that we're having, so I also serve as chaplain for hospice, and one of the things I have noticed over the years is that we no longer talk about funerals, we talk about celebration of life. And so already we're beginning to see that transition. And so the paradox for me of joy is it also comes, as you say, with sadness.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing. So are there specific ways in your traditions that you teach people about how to cultivate joy or access this joy?
Actually, you just mentioned something that I wanted to touch on, which is that underneath, how can I say, that it's not so much that joy is competing with some other experience. That underneath us, on our basic nature, when we look out and we see the world as it is, and see how people struggle and how we struggle, there's a natural quality of sadness. And this sadness is extremely fertile, extremely ripe. We call it the genuine heart of sadness. So it's a tenderness, a poignancy that we feel towards all of life and everyone around us. So it is a quality of sadness, but it's not in contradiction to joy. It's in contradiction to depression. Depression has a lot of story and a lot of sort of woe is me. But this is the sort of real poignancy of the heart that at the same time is connected and gentle and moist, and at the same time joyful. Yeah.
Can you say that phrase again?
The genuine heart of sadness.
Genuine heart of sadness. Yes. I'm really jealous. Like, Buddhists have the best phrases. It's a cool phrase. I'm like, why don't we have a cool phrase? I would say this whole piece, Liz, I was noticing your sticker. Liz has the best day ever sticker on her bottom, right?
Yes.
So, that's an attitude, right? Like, I think joyfulness is really an orientation towards life more than a something that, happens externally, an orientation that, best day ever. Whatever kind of day it was, you had a day and you did things and you were with people, you were alive, like best day ever is kind of part of that. And so I think in our tradition, I would say gratitude is to me the fundamental piece of it. And we, obviously the Christian tradition, gratitude is very highly valued. In all our traditions, gratitude is highly valued. And that sense of, that's kind of where it begins, like, do you know anybody that's really joyful that isn't really filled with a lot of gratitude? Like, I don't think it happens. When we gather on Sunday mornings, the first thing we do is invite people to share expressions of gratitude, because that's like, we're here to do that before we do anything else, and then we'll do other things. But first of all, we're just gonna be thankful and grateful, and no matter what your condition, even when you're in difficult times, we have a whole lot to be thankful for. And for me, like, that phrase, best day ever, and a lot of those simple things kind of help me focus on, wow, I could complain right now, but you know what? That was the best day ever. So, thanks for being
Timmy reminded me that in our Christian tradition, we have the symbol of the cross. So we have, prior the suffering of Jesus, and then we have the resurrection of Jesus. So within that symbol itself, there is that paradox of sadness and joy. And for me, that's one of the reasons we hold joy for other people, that they can catch it when they're sad. They recognize it at some deep level.
From the course's perspective, it's interesting. It's one of the few paths that really talks about going into the emotions that disturb us, rather than, just focusing on gratitude or anything else. Not that, that absolutely is a wonderful way to live. It talks about not justifying our emotions, not getting stuck in our anger or our sadness or our guilt or our fear, but to recognize it, to move into it, to understand its source, where it's coming from, how we're thinking about it. And thus, by sort of familiarizing ourselves with it, by embracing it and moving through it, we reach joy on the other side. So it goes with that, going from mourning to dancing. But really, in knowing our fundamental nature, our safety, our joy, and everything else, that can never be taken from us. So not to be afraid of these emotions, not to be afraid of what we might perceive as troubled times or negative experiences, but to move through it, knowing we are safe, knowing our fundamental nature can never be changed, and thus reaching it, by going through the troubled waters rather than trying to avoid them. Because the more we deny them, the more we avoid them, the more we're sort of saying there's some scary thing, hovering close that can get us at any moment, and we become less and less engaged with our true nature. We become more frightened of sort of going into the dark forest to get to the light area in the center.
Yeah, great. You want to add anything to that, Colby, about how your faith may cultivate joy?
I'm actually not thinking about my faith. I'm thinking about couples therapy. And I'm thinking of, this is Marcelle's world. I'm thinking about play, and I'm thinking about how important play is. I'm also thinking about Oria and how in some difficult moments he went to play therapy, and how kids, they experience so much through just play, right? And we forget that as we grow up. We forget how to play. So it might not have a connection to Judaism, or it might, but that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know, I guess I shouldn't speak for most of us, but right now it seems like it can be a difficult time for people to access joy. And so I'd like for you to just talk a little bit about what are the impediments to joy, like what gets in the way for us? Like, how does it get blocked? How does it get shut down? why is it that it's difficult for so many to access joy regularly?
Biblical story. So Sarah, or Sarah, couldn't get pregnant for a very, very, very long time. And I think, Tim, tell me if I'm wrong, but by the time she got pregnant, she was like 96 or something. Biologically impossible, but that's the Bible. More power to her.
Go girl.
You go, girl. And when she got pregnant, she gave birth to Yitzchak. And Yitzchak in Hebrew means laughter. So an interesting lesson or question there is something that filled her with so much sorrow. For those maybe here in this room who have struggled with fertility, it's real, right? And so much sorrow. And then it happens, and her son reminds her to laugh. And only then did Sarai, who is known as Sarai up until this point, and then when she gives birth, she becomes Sarah with a hey at the end, which is in the Bible, in the Torah. When you add a hey to your name, that's when you add Yah, or God. That's when God enters the picture. So only through Sarai giving birth and feeling her pain, and also remembering to laugh, did she find God. You're gonna need to stop.
Yeah, I think, times have always been hard if you live on planet Earth, I think what's a little bit interesting now is that, I think when we experience other people's pain, that's difficult. We feel that. We feel it in our bodies, we feel it in our emotions, we feel it in our heart and soul. And right now, in our technological world, we have the ability to experience people's pain all over the world, 1,000,000 times a day in 1,000 different ways. So we have a lot of heaviness and weight and pain and struggle, coming at us, maybe from across the world, maybe from down the street, or wherever it may be. So I think one of the challenges when we're constantly bombarded as people with hearts and souls, we feel that. When you feel struggle, you feel people's pain, you feel their emotion. And that's difficult, and that weighs on us. And so with so much of it, it can become hard.
I'm gonna need to exit the building.
I would say, it was fun to talk about joy with the kids just popping in.
I'm glad that they bring some joy.
So anything else on what gets in the way of accessing joy?
I think resistance. And I don't mean resistance against joy, but as I was talking before, and Tim's talked about, well, in fact, we've all, about moving in to the sadness, into grief or whatever, into the discomfort. If we resist it, if we put up blocks and try to protect ourselves from it, unfortunately, we end up cutting ourselves off from our natural sense of joy. Often this is more psychological, but a defense is a double-edged sword. What we do to defend ourselves from what we perceive as painful out there, we end up cutting ourselves from ourselves inside.
So Tim, you had mentioned gratitude specifically as a practice to access joy, and I'm wondering if others have thoughts about that, like, are there specific practices or ways to help us touch that basic nature or access joy to feel joyful?
I mean, I think that, I mean, even when we wake up, just the minutes after we wake up, just take stock. You know, I have another day, I have another opportunity to be a good friend, to be a good father, to be a good mate. I have another opportunity to develop love, patience, whatever, you know, this is yet another opportunity. We don't know when it's gonna come again, if it ever will. As they say in the Buddhist tradition, we don't know what's gonna come next, our next breath or our next life. In fact, there's a tradition of at night, once you've had your evening tea, to put the teacup upside down with the understanding that this might be it. So there's a question of sort of waking up to the sort of very bittersweet impermanence of everything and appreciating that. And then, of course, you know, we've talked to Marshall about this almost endlessly, which is just to walk in the world and to look around and see what is given to us by others, what's made possible by others. And you know, each time, you know, we go and get our fancy little coffee, just for a moment, just to flash on all the hands that made that possible. Every time we turn on the you know, the lights, it's like whoever in the world it was that was responsible for making that possible. They're part of our world. They are our world. So to keep a very a sense, a constant sense of how much is given to us. I mentioned it before, you know, one of my favorite short quotes from one of my teachers is to always remember that we are a gathering of the kindnesses of others. And for me, just remembering that is uplifting.
I think for me, there's two pieces to this. And one is, you know, even as you're sitting there right now, to dig into the memory banks and start remembering, you know, when did you experience joy? And allowing that memory to like a dominoes coming down, but flooding yourself with those memories of experiences of joy. And maybe in your life, you're saying, well, I've never experienced joy. So you can have a memory of maybe you saw a movie or maybe you saw somebody else that was joyful. But to really tune our mind to asking specifically to focus on, if I just say, or you just say right now, I'm joyful. Just say it out loud. I am joyful. I'm experiencing joy. I'm experiencing joy. I'm joyful. I'm experiencing joy. I'm joyful. I'm experiencing joy. And what happens? It's like if we feed our brain, the brain's gonna go, I know how to be joyful because I've experienced before, but so often we practice amnesia, we forget that we are joyful. So that's one of the practices. The other one that I've come to appreciate over the last couple of weeks since we've been talking about this. So every night before I go to bed right now, I go, okay, so today, how did I experience joy? And if I go, well, I didn't, then I have a couple of favorite comedic sitcoms that I watch so that before I go to bed, I'm in uproarious laughter about it. And that's how I fall asleep. And when I wake up in the morning, it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a gorgeous day. So I think there's a rhythm that we can have when we go to sleep at night, even if we just practice on joy.
What you're saying makes me think of how fear gets in the way.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to use a really trivial example, but you know, like there's this idea that like if we're joyful, that something bad might happen.
Yeah.
So here's how this deeply happens in my life. Like when I'm watching a football game, and like my team's ahead, but it's only the third quarter. Like I can't be happy. I can't be joyful. I can't celebrate. I can't yell. Because if I do, then something bad is going to happen. But the extension of that in sort of real life is that I think that happens to us. Is that like when things are going well, sometimes we find out the fear might take away our joy because we're fearful. If we're like, wow, life is good and I'm really loving this. Like, well, don't say that because then it'll turn bad or something bad will happen. Sort of the subconscious fear that like that kind of makes us makes me push joy away because you're afraid if we just embrace it, we won't get to hold on to it and it'll go away, which is not true. But that fear, I think, keeps us at bay.
Did you want to? Okay, so for me, meditation is the practice. And not meditation so that I feel calm or joyful, but meditation as the practice of mind training. Because after years of doing meditation, what I become really mindful of is when my thoughts start to go negative. And our brains evolved to look at the negative. It was a survival mechanism. When we were walking across the savannah, the rustling grass, if we thought, oh, it's the wind and it's a lion, we're dead. You know, if we think it's a lion and it's the wind, we have an adrenaline rush, but we're fine. So our brains always look for the negative. And with the practice of meditation, your thoughts start to slow down and you're much more mindful, or I'm more mindful of how I think. And it's interesting, I could be driving, I could be doing laundry, I could be doing, just trivial stuff, usually that doesn't take a lot of concentration. And my mind starts to wander. And where does it wander? It goes to the troubles of the world. It goes to the troubles in my life. And it really likes to sort of perseverate on those things and think them over again and again, or something stupid I said to somebody else and what I should have said, and it just keeps going around and around. And if I can catch it, and especially my daughter lives in Montana, and every now and then I miss her, and then I start to feel sad. And then I said, but 40 seconds ago, I didn't feel sad because I wasn't thinking, I miss her. I was perfectly okay. And isn't it interesting how I pulled in a thought that made me feel sad, and I wasn't feeling sad 40 seconds ago. And so I just let go of that thought. That doesn't mean we don't take action to things. If there's something we can do with the thought, we take action. And even if it's striving to help or make change, and that's hard, that action can also be joyful. But what I become mindful to is really watching when my mind starts to think negative thoughts about what's happening in the world or climate or whatever. And I just get caught there without being able to do anything. And that's how I rob myself of joy. So just getting quiet, finding the space in the thinking, and coming back to my current experience gets me back in touch with my joy.
I'll just kind of add to that, and I think also that and we don't have to be joyful all the time, right? It's okay to be sad, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be to experience all the range of emotions that we feel, We don't want to be stuck in bad things. If we think we have to be joyful all the time, we'll be disappointed because we're not going to be. It's okay to feel all the emotions that we feel in life.
Yeah, that kind of leads to the next question, and you guys have been really good on this panel, I think, about talking about how we shouldn't just avoid sadness and pain, or this isn't about turning a blind eye to what's happening in the world. But the question I have is around, how do we make sure that joy isn't a way, like a spiritual bypass of oh, this is hard, just think about kittens wrestling or something, how do we make sure that we're not just avoiding, avoiding dealing with things, or we get so much bad news or turning on the TV, and a lot of us want to just escape that. And we have lots of ways that we escape that, some healthy, some not so healthy. So how do we make sure, and I feel like everyone is selling joy, selling happiness, whether it's food or a weight loss program or a drink or internet shopping, whatever, there's so many options out there promising joy that obviously are not fulfilling. But how do we make sure that we're not just band-aiding or spiritual bypassing?
I think to this question and the previous question, I think a lot of it has to do with what is the narrative of our life? What are we up to when we get up in the morning? What are we about? And if we don't have one, then we're just being blown around by the news and by our hormones or whatever the thing of the day is. I can remember extremely vividly once going to my teacher, who's up in the foothills above the Kathmandu Valley, and I was complaining to him about my bad meditation practice, and then I was just bitching about everything. And he stopped me very abruptly, and he said, just taking 7 steps towards your meditation cushion with the aspiration to tame your mind, open your heart, so that you can benefit yourself or others, that makes this life meaningful. And then get on the cushion, do whatever you do on the cushion, and leave it. So it's the aspiration. We never know what's going to happen in our life, but we can control the meaning that we give to it. So if we wake up and say, okay, today what I'm about is to in some way touch this world so that it's a little healthier, a little lighter at the end of the day, that infuses our life. So for me, there's a big part of being narrative, and I know all of our traditions have narratives of life, and that's my narrative.
Yeah, I think you described it, Rachel, like those things are kind of Band-Aids. If I eat or drink or shop or whatever, that's not joy. It's not going to bring it to us. It's just our attempt to have it. It's our attempt to find it. So it's like, that's not we're not substituting. That's just another reaching for it. So I think when you if you have a sense of peacefulness, of joy in your life, of that attitude, that orientation, I don't think there's any downside to that. I think it makes all the things we want to do in the world better. And those other things are just attempts to try to find something maybe we don't have.
I think one of the beauties of our faith traditions is that it allows us to look reality in the face, for better or for worse. Because in our faith traditions, what we hold on to and what we know is there is always hope. There is always love. And in that, there is always joy. And so for me, in our faith traditions, it's like, how can we not embrace that and cultivate that and be that for others?
Yeah, I think that's such an incredibly important point, which is to cultivate love, frankly. And because when we touch into that, it puts everything in perspective. The troubles are here, but the basic sort of love. My first teacher said, we have this idea in the Buddhist tradition that even the most vicious animals love their babies.
Exactly.
So it's inherent. My first teacher used to say, everybody loves something, if only tortillas.
So now we'd like to open it up to all of you if you have any questions, and that's also true for our people online. We have someone in the room who can ask questions for you if you have any. And then in the room, just feel free to raise your hand and we can bring you a mic. And we just ask that you keep your comments or questions brief and on this topic. Thanks. On the topic, so you kind of ran towards the idea of cultivating joy and how it connects to life meaning. So from the different perspectives, what would be kind of the intention? So one of Tim's last comments was, we don't have to just sit in joy, constantly block out negative emotions. They might be uncomfortable, but moving through them, but also not getting stuck on them and coming back to joy. And so from spiritual tradition, what would be sort of the point of your life meaning? And you've touched on kindness and lifting up others, sharing joy, and really down to love. But from a spiritual perspective, what would be sort of what would it dictate for our life meaning and for our direction?
Say that last.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to the question, is sort of like, what would be then from the spiritual traditions the meaning of life? Is it really simply to focus on love, then you feel all of the emotions and it's still coming back to love because you have that life meaning? for love, or are there other aspects that really should be the focus?
Sorry, that's very
No,
round.
it's very clear. It's very clear from the course's point perspective that that time and spiritual development has the goal of awakening, and that nobody awakens alone. So we all have a role to play. So it's not about I sit on my pillow and meditate until I'm transcended. That's not possible. We all have a role to play in helping everybody move through pain and find that peace and joy. But it may be, you may be called to paint a piece of art that really inspires people. Somebody else might be called to work in the earth and grow flowers, and some may work as therapists or doctors. Some may be religious teachers that help bring. So we all have a role, and it won't look the same, but it touches people, and that is the biggest thing, that we grow together, not alone, from our perspective.
Yeah, and I would say, I think in the Christian tradition, this really kind of focuses us outwards. One of the great teachings of Jesus was this teaching around, when I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was thirsty, did you give me a drink? When I was a stranger, did you welcome me? Whatever condition you find those around you in, were you able to help that condition be better? Were you able to enhance that? So I think a lot of it is found in the ability to help elevate the lives of the people around you and meet them in their place where they are, and to help make that better. And hopefully people are doing that for you as well.
So I have a wondering question for you. And the wondering question is, it has to do with what does it mean to be human? And in your humanity, what is your passion? Because what your passion is going to lead you to your call. So if you're passionate about finding water, you're going to be a person who assists other people to find water, whether it's physically in the ground or symbolically, within the tears that fall. And so I would just wonder with you a little bit about what does it mean to be human, and what is your passion?
Yeah, other questions? Tim? Yeah.
You guys have all heard me get on my soapbox of whatever I heard on the radio this week, and this is another one. I just listened to an interview with Ezra Klein interviewed a guy named James Tallarico, who's a Texas politician. He's a minister studying to be a minister. His soapbox that he was on is just like greed in this country, and like how the greed, they're trying to, he calls it a divide of the top and the bottom versus the left and the right. And his mission is to sort of, he's one of the most eloquent guys I've heard in years, but he's trying to bring the left and the right together. The elephant in the room to me is greed. Like in this country, I feel like we're taught from a very early age, this is a capitalist model, not that I'm against it, but just, greed is such a big divisive thing. I guess, how do you guys feel like greed relates to joy? And would you feel like greed is the antithesis of joy as we try to bring people together with a joyous heart, an open heart? Does greed sort of put a roadblock in that bringing people together?
Okay.
I was just getting it back. I think it goes to what Tim was saying, and your question about using joy as a distraction. And to me, I don't know, I can't necessarily be judgmental. I think greed comes out of fear. So anything that we do, I mean, there's a lot of things we do to compensate or hide our fear. And all of those are going to be the antithesis of joy. So I think picking just one thing would be a mistake. But, you know, anything that is fueled by our fear, whether, you know, and greed would come out of a sense of lack, even if they don't have any lack whatsoever, that greed's coming out of a sense of lack. So lack of power, lack of love, lack of resources, all of those things from the lowest to, you know, the poorest person to the richest person is going to take you out of joy.
Other questions? Any online, Katie?
Not yet.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a question, but there's a contradiction in me when Tim was speaking and he said something about sadness. And then I realized that the profound sadness and profound joy can be expressed by tears. And I was wondering, why would that be? Then why sadness and a joy be cheerful will bring tears to our eyes?
Because there is a place in us, a kind of golden pool of richness, of goodness. And then we touch it, it feels like reality. It feels like coming home. And so the tears of joy and relief that we're home. And the joy is just the nature of that. It's this sort of pool of richness that is our basic nature. And so all of our troubles are related to having become disconnected from that. And when we finally touch into it, it's like coming home, and all that coming home implies. The joy, the relief, the confidence that it gives us, the willingness to then go out and connect with others and help them find their way home. So it's all that kind of dance of a kind of very moist, enormous heart. And that encompasses joy and, again, sadness, which are right next to each other all the time. Yeah.
I make a quick comment with what you talked about, and that is that next time you experience your tears, pay attention to whether they're coming from the outside or the inside. Because sadness comes from one, joy comes from another, and it is a release. Like you
Which is
said,
which?
Oh, you would ask me that one.
What do you mean, the outside or the inside? What do you mean?
So when tears fall, they can fall right by your nose,
Inside here,
yeah,
outside.
and outside of your eye on both sides. Yeah, so go experiment.
Or you're skiing really fast.
And wouldn't that be joy?
True. I actually, and I haven't read anything on it since, but this was about the mid-90s. And I was reading an article by a Swedish medical researcher, biological researcher. And at that point, they still had not determined why we cry. But it's more than just joy and sadness. We cry when we get really angry. We can cry when we're frightened. We cry when we're guilty. And what this paper that I was reading said is, best as they could determine, we cry when the body can no longer hold the amount of emotion that it's experiencing. So that any intense emotion, good or what we would call bad, happiness, joy, all that, ends up resulting in tears.
What about when it doesn't?
That it's not intense enough, I guess.
Or
I'm just reading, I did not do the research.
Well, no, I just wonder what repressed emotion does, because you certainly do that too.
it makes us sick.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Okay, well, maybe we'll, we got one more question.
Yeah, just a comment and then a question. I actually really enjoyed this and the sort of the ping pong between the rational side, the Buddhist side of contemplating joy and some of the more epiphany oriented sort of joys is really interesting, and I see the discussions of. But my question was really about when you can't rationalize a loss, when we've had a profound loss in our life, or we've had a friend who's had a big loss. Maybe it's a loss of who you hope for in the future, whatever. How do you deal with that irrational? How do you overcome that to find the joy? What can you do? Or how can you help a friend?
I don't know, but I think part of it for me is that like sometimes it just takes time. Like we can't rush it a lot of the time. You know, there's a Thich Nhat Hanh phrase actually that he said, if you've lost your smile, don't worry, the dandelion will hold it for you. You know, somehow that the universe, like, you know, sometimes I've lost it and I'm not going to have it maybe for a while, you know. And that's okay. I always encourage people, like, it's okay to be in that. It might be a while, you know. The universe will wait for you. I think in faith community, you know, we hold it for each other. You know, we'll keep singing the songs for you until you can sing them again with us. So I think I don't know how you get there, but I think we stick with each other and we give it the time and we keep walking that road together. Yeah, that's all.
Talking a lot. So I think it's Middle Eastern, but also moves into India. There's a tradition with loss, with the death of a person, where they have professional mourners. And what these professional mourners do is they dress in rags and they cover themselves in ash and soot. And they just sit with the person and join in the grief and mourning. And I think this is what we miss sometimes in Western culture, is we think we should all be happy. You know, it goes back to, you know, and we want to help our friend feel better again and know there's hope. So we encourage and we support and we cheer on, when sometimes we just have to sit and tear our clothes and cover ourselves in ash and be in that deep place. But it's helpful when somebody sits there with us.
I got a question for everybody else. So we got a lot of cultural stuff going on. We have people arguing. We got all this kind of stuff happening. Do you find it harder to be joyful now than you have in the recent past?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There's a lot of yes.
Yeah, that actually ties into my question, because I think I do, and I think for a while I wasn't sure if it was because now I'm an adult. And adulting, you know, the things you're aware of when you're an adult are different than even when you're a young adult. I guess I'm not a young adult anymore. And then the other half of me thinks that no, it has to do with the state of the world. And I think where both of those experiences overlap is in this idea of the breakdown of justice. That when I was growing up, I had this idea of, oh, the world works this way, either on, you know, a large scale or in a variety of microcosms. You know, you do this and this happens, this good thing, you do a good thing and this good thing happens. And, you know, difficult things happen along the way, but overall, you know, that it's this progression. And I'm wondering, I think sometimes that is one of my impediments to the return to joy or the experience of joy is wrestling with this breakdown of my idea of justice. And I was wondering if anyone has insights to that particular relationship. Either that as an impediment or how you work your way through any sort of system that you feel has broken, something that is broken. Is it about repairing or is it about navigating, etc.?
I think that part of this is the quality, the question about joy, and then the harsh reality of what's going on. These don't live in the same plane. So what we're called to do, or what we have the opportunity to do through our contemplation, through our meditation, our prayer, whatever it might be, is to create a quality of mind and heart. Again, in the Buddhist tradition, we don't distinguish mind and heart. Through meditation, through contemplation, to create a heart and a mind that is vast enough and balanced enough and flexible enough so that can it accommodate all the goods and the bads, the impermanence, ups and downs, the horrible things in life. So in other words, those things exist in a large space. So for instance, if we were sitting in a small room and someone let a Bengal tiger in, we would be completely freaked out because there's no room for a Bengal tiger and me safely in that small room. But if my room was the size of a football field and someone let a Bengal tiger in at the end, we turn to it and go, how beautiful. There's room for everything. So a healthy mind and heart are vast and flexible and can accommodate everything. So what's happening when we get contracted is that in fact we get contracted. There's not enough space for the joys and the sorrows. Everything becomes like this. And in becoming contracted, become more solid, harder to figure out, harder to understand. So this is why I think all spiritual practice, contemplation, meditation, everything, is to create an environment, an internal environment that is open and spacious and balanced and flexible. And within that, we ride the waves of this life. So that's our personal practice, to open that. Yeah.
So that question kind of leads into my question for Tim Olmsted. I feel like there's like a yin and a yang going on here in our world right now, where there's suffering and there's pain, there's hatred and there's injustice, but then at the very same time, it's almost like my husband saying, the dandelion is holding the smile. There's people walking and singing together, and there's people connecting in a way that they wouldn't have connected otherwise, and trying to create safety around people, and trying to feed people, and trying to nurture people's spirits and a sense of community. So it's like there's this super negativity, and then there's this positivity that's coming out of it. And I just want to know from a Buddhist perspective about that, the yin and the yang.
What was the famous quote from Viktor Frankl? When everything else has been taken away, we still have the ability to
choose your own attitude.
To choose our own attitude, to choose our narrative, to choose our take, our approach. So that is always possible for us. And the human heart is always beautiful when we access it. So we always have a kind of a beacon about where to go. So that's not in any way to downplay the incredible pain that so many people are in. But it doesn't have to collapse the hearts of the world at all. In fact, quite the opposite. Yeah.
I've been sitting here wondering a little bit about how when we hear something or we experience something, we categorize it as positive or negative. And in my understanding of our faith tradition is that we need to move to value neutral. It's like, this is just what it is. Now, what is my response? And so I think we continue to hold that polar opposite when we decide that this is positive and this is negative. And for me, that also has to do with emotions. So if joy is positive, then it's like, and hate is negative, it's like, no, this is about humanity. This is about how we as human beings experience the world. And so I'm wondering, and question of what you were asking, is it really about being faced with the injustice of what's going on? Or are we really facing humanity? What is humanity gonna be like? You know, are we gonna continue to be subject to people's free will? Yes. People's free decisions? Yes. And so how can we just begin to understand and accept that this is the way life is happening? Not positive or negative, but it's just part of the way the world is moving at this point. And eons of time from the beginning, it's been like this. This is not anything new. So historically, if you look at how humanity has treated each other, this is not anything new.
So that's the companion to this conversation, which is equanimity.
Yeah,
That's,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up here then. I just wanted to highlight what I heard from the leaders about the practices. You know, we always encourage everyone to take something home with them from these and maybe share it or just practice it in your own life. So I'd just like to highlight what I heard from the leaders in terms of how we can actually contact and practice this joy. And I heard them say meditation practice. There was a lot of talk about appreciation and gratitude, and it can be appreciation just for having this life. It can be appreciation for impermanence, that recognizing that life is fleeting, this moment is fleeting, so just appreciating that can bring joy. Remembering positive memories, and Tim mentioned sympathetic joy, which is when we can find joy in other people having joy. And there's endless amounts of joy in other people that we can experience. And even funny TV shows can be another way to contact joy at times. So yeah, we encourage you to take these with you, spread these.
Colby's playfulness.
Oh,
Yes.
Colby's playfulness and her sweet little kids. Yes, she just exemplified that with her kids here, which was wonderful. So thank you all for being here. If you'd like to be on our email list and you are not yet, there's little note cards over there. You can just write your email on a note card and we'll add you. We only send emails when we have these events. We also have surveys. If anyone would like to fill one out and give us some feedback, you're also welcome to suggest future topics on those surveys, and we do look at them and talk about them at our monthly meetings. So feel free to give us some feedback. Also on that little pedestal there is that information. And this talk will be up on our website the next few days or so. So if you have anyone you want to share it with, feel free to direct them to our website, exploringthesacred.org. And thanks for coming, and thanks to our leaders for